welcome back to another edition of Crafting and Crime Daily, the show where I recap live trials. This is take 2. Next time, I gotta remember to turn on the microphone. I'm getting used to this microphone. Okay, I am currently covering the case of the state of Arizona versus Michael Turney. I got the name right. And we're going to talk about what happened yesterday. I don't know how many of you saw the short that I did, but it was a very, very interesting outcome. Yeah, the case is over. And we're going to talk about that. But first, I want to talk to you about an event that I am hosting, Crafting Journey, with my good buddy, Mickey Sunshine Creates. She's on YouTube. That's her YouTube channel, Mickey Sunshine Creates. There is a link down in the description to the Google form that you can fill out if you want to participate. It is a diamond painting event. You need to pick out a diamond painting that is at least 50 by 50 centimeters, and it has to be a fantasy escape place. Like, where would you like to escape to? A castle? I don't know, clouds, a yacht, something that you would like to escape to. She and I are doing a painting called Fairy Town. And it's like these little fairy cottages that we're going to be diamond painting. There's an enhancement kit that goes with it from Diamond Painting Drills. There are a ton of sponsors that are giving discounts and giveaways to participants of this event, including, I'm not going to mention them all because I'll forget somebody. But here is a video that Mickey did of all the sponsors. Take a look. She did a great job, didn't she? Okay, so once you fill out the form, if you want to be part of the Facebook Messenger group where we all chit chat with each other, let me know. I'll put you in the group. So let's get to the state of Arizona versus Michael Turney. And let me talk to you about how this all went down yesterday. I am sitting here. I grabbed my coffee. I'm doing my research for yesterday's show, which is to update you on some cases. The Chad Dorman case. I updated you also on the boat crash case, Murdaugh Monday. And what else? Anyway, I'm looking at all that. Meanwhile, court has started for yesterday in the Michael Turney case. Now, there was no court on Friday, so nothing really to talk to you about yesterday. So I'm watching the feed, and first of all, they're continuing the cross-examination of Detective Anderson, who had been on the stand on Thursday. Let me have some coffee. And right away, the sound is just horrendous. The audio it was just awful. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I've got to deal with this all day. So I finish my research, I do the show. When the show is concluded, I go back to the beginning of the feed for the testimony from yesterday, and I'm listening through this horrible audio, and I'm seeing the chat. Now, the chat's usually current as opposed to the video that I'm listening to. So you can watch the video from the beginning, but the chat is current. And I'm glancing at the chat and I'm seeing some discussions on Double Jeopardy. And I'm like, oh, something happened. So I I fast forward to the end, and sure enough, something happened. And I'm going to tell you about it. So I I finished the show. I was watching the rest of the cross examination, and the defense is pointing out, he's like, wouldn't you agree, or wasn't part of your file the letter that Michael Turney did to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children? Yes. Wasn't it part of your file the letter he did to the state attorney, the letter he did to the attorney general, the letter he did to the governor, the letter he did to the FBI, all trying to draw attention to the disappearance of his daughter, Alyssa Turney? Yes. And Anderson was like, yes, that was part of it. Yes, yes. So they were trying to drive home the point that this man, Michael Turney, did everything in his power to try to draw attention to the disappearance of his daughter, as opposed to someone who murdered somebody and just got away with it and just doesn't ever want any attention. Like, if you murdered somebody, would you be asking the state attorney to investigate, the attorney general, the FBI? No, I wouldn't want their attention. Would you? Anyway, that's the point he was trying to drive home. So he finishes up with Detective Anderson. There's a little bit of, rebuttal questions by the state attorney. And then state attorney stands up and says, the state rests. And I'm thinking, oh, no, you didn't. Where's your evidence? Where's the evidence? Haven't I been saying that all last week? I kept saying, this is not enough to convince a jury beyond a reasonable doubt. This is not enough. So the judge at this point says to the jury, all right, the state has presented all of their evidence. I have some legal arguments to listen to. I'm going to send you guys off on a break. I'll bring you back when this is concluded. So he sends the jury out. This defense gets up and they make the arguments as follows: that there is not substantial evidence in this case. Number one, there was a general failure of the state to present evidence that would support a conviction of Michael Turney. Number two, there was a failure of the state to even prove that jurisdiction lied in Wisconsin, in this Green Bay, Wisconsin, in whatever county this was. And number three, corpus delicti. Whoa, what is that? You're like, okay, Rebecca, I've never heard that word. Well, maybe you've heard it, but you didn't know what it meant. Here's what it means. For example, you have someone sitting in prison and they want some attention. So they confess to a murder. Oh, this is Alyssa Turney. I've been listening to her sister's podcast. I'm going to confess to that murder so I can get some attention. Maybe she'll have me on her podcast. So they confess, but there's no evidence that they really did it. So what this doctrine says is that you can confess to something, but you cannot go to prison for your confession unless there's other evidence that supports that you actually murdered Alyssa Turney or whoever it is. So the defense said the only thing that the state has said is that, that she has a bad relationship with her father, that he probably wasn't the best parent, and that he was paranoid. Everything has been speculation, character evidence, rumors, innuendos, Nothing where, I mean, could you infer that she's dead? Yeah, you could infer that she's dead, but you can't confer the elements of second degree murder, and that's that he intentionally killed his daughter or caused her to be dead. There's there's no proof of intent, no proof that he caused her death, nothing. So what they said with respect to the jurisdiction issue is we don't know that she's even dead. Did she die in the county? We don't know. There's no evidence of a crime scene. There's no evidence of witnesses in the county. Nothing. That's kind of a weak argument. But the corpus delicti that they set. Now, our client, to be clear, has not confessed to anything, but he's made statements that the state thinks infers his guilt. And the biggest statement came during that phone call with his son, Michael Seth Turney, where he calls her a, are the kids in the room? Get rid of the kids. Stupid fucking bitch. Yeah. And he indicates during that phone call that yes, he's at the end of his rope with Alyssa, that she's keeps doing something over and over again, and um, but is that evidence? You know, even if you accept that this statement might infer that he was going to kill her, there's nothing, there's no evidence outside of that to support that he intended to kill her and that he caused her death. And the corpus delicti doctrine says that you have to take away that statement. Take away that statement. Is there anything else to support it? No, there's not. And in that statement, he does talk about how, you know, he needs to remove the problem. But he's not talking about Alyssa. If you listen to the phone call, he's talking about himself. He says, I'm just going to kill myself. He doesn't say, I'm going to kill Alyssa. He says he's going to kill himself. I'm the problem. Probably was. In any case, the state gets up there and they say, listen, the law does not envision that simply because you've hidden the body and you committed a murder where there's no physical evidence, for example, a strangulation, it doesn't, you can do that without leaving any physical evidence. There's no blood, there's no bodily fluid, you know, there's no weapon, there's no crime scene. The law doesn't envision that you can hide the body, commit the murder, no physical evidence, and that you can get away with it. That you can escape being held accountable because you were good at hiding a body. So they went through their evidence. They said, you know, in what world does a 17-year-old leave home, run away, and not take their cell phone? Doesn't take her makeup, doesn't take her mom's jewelry. All of her clothes are still in the closet. She doesn't take anything. She writes this runaway note where she says she took $300. And we're going to talk about that. So he said, there's a reasonable inference that she is dead. She never accessed the $1,800 she has in her bank account. She has never contacted any family, never contacted any friends. They've never been able to find her despite searches of her name, any kind of iterations of her name, her dead friend's name, anything that could lead them back to Alyssa Turney. No use of her social security number, nothing, nothing in 22 years. And they said, you know, this phone call, he said he was done with her. He was done with her. He'd had enough. He was calling her a stupid fucking bitch. You know, what does that prove to me? That he's a bad father, that he's disgusting. But I've listened to phone calls between these family members, and they did not mince words. They used a lot of foul language. Some families are like that. I'm not. I'm not. And I'm not one of these Christian with a cross hanging in my, foyer. I just don't talk that way. Yeah. A lot of families don't talk that way. I would never refer to my child that way. But in any case, they argued that they had put on substantial evidence that a jury could infer beyond a reasonable doubt that he intended to cause her death and did cause her death. One of the things they said is that why would he pick her up from school early that day to discuss her plans for the summer? He could have done that the night before. He could have done that the night after. Why did he need to pick her up early to discuss her plans for the summer? And the state wants the jury to infer that that was his showing of intent to get rid of her. No, I don't think so. Okay. Okay. So the defense has one more chance. The other thing that the plaintiff or the state argued was that corpus delicti only applies to confessions, and they admittedly said there was no confession in this case. So the defense attorney gets back up and she says, no, corpus delicti applies to statements as well as confessions. So the judge said, I'm ready to make my ruling. What? He did not say, we're going to take a break and I'll come back and render my decision, which is usually what they do. And they usually, this is the point, when in a judgment of acquittal request, I've told you guys many, many, many times that once the state presents their evidence, the defense gets up and they make these kinds of arguments. And most of the time, it's sort of a routine motion to preserve. It's done to preserve your appellate rights. If you appeal and you haven't made that motion, you're usually not going to get your appeal. Very rarely is it granted. But the judge right away says, I made my decision. Okay. And he said, I'm going to talk about the corpus delicti first. He says, I have considered the evidence absent the statements of Michael Turney. That phone call, gone. I've considered the evidence presented despite that. And I don't believe that it is sufficient that a jury could infer that he caused Alyssa Turney's death. So I'm going to grant the motion to dismiss. Then he says, on the judgment of acquittal, I don't even need to consider that because the point is moot. I've just dismissed the case. But as a matter of record, I'm going to go through that argument as well. And he says that, let me find my notes. He says, is there any evidence in this case? There is some circumstantial evidence upon which the jury could infer that he caused her death. Is it substantial evidence? He says, I don't think it is. I don't think that a jury could decide beyond a reasonable doubt that he intended to cause and did cause her death. So that motion would be granted as well. He says, I am going to sign the order that the defendant be released on these charges. Case is over. So he brings the jury back in and he says, while you were on the break, I considered some legal motions and I've made some decisions, and as a result, this case is over. Your jury service is concluded. You may leave. Hugs and kisses. Goodbye. Yeah. I'm still picking my jaw up off the floor. That's how it went down. So the person I feel bad for is Sarah Turney. She has spent years of her life. I heard her say in one statement, Dad, I have 4 jobs, and 3 of them involve Alyssa. She's a full-time podcaster, and I hope she continues to do her podcast. It's called Voices for Justice. The first few episodes she focused on the disappearance of her sister, but after that, for the last since 2019, she's been focusing on other missing persons. And it's a really good thing that she is doing, and she does it well. So I hope that she continues, that this doesn't dissuade her from that. Um, she's doing good work out there. But in this case, there was so much information that Sarah had that just could not come into a case. It there wasn't it was all based on hearsay. I heard someone say something, I saw something. Um, you know, the allegations of sexual abuse were never proven, so that couldn't come in. There was argument that the the note that was written, the runaway note, was written at 2 different times. That when she said in that note that she had stolen $300 from her father, that incident of the $300 occurred months ago, and she returned the $300 to her father. I never heard this information. Why didn't that come out when Sarah Turney took the stand? Because that's pretty relevant, but I don't know. The other thing I heard Sarah say on her podcast was that Alyssa could have stopped by the bank where she had her own account, didn't need her father to withdraw anything, was a block away. She would have had to walk 1 block, leave her house 1 block, take the $1,800 that she left in the bank, and be gone with it. I didn't know that. Not that, I don't know that that would have made a difference, to be honest. I don't know. Sarah talks about on our podcast that she found a map at one point that her father kept of the desert with certain markers, maybe indicating where a body was. Did the police ever check that out? I don't know. Then there was a phone call that she had with her father that didn't get played to the jury, where he said, come see me on my deathbed and I'll tell you everything. Yeah. That would have been another corpus delicti statement. In any case, there was also a video that was taken by Sarah when she was young. She was, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. They went camping, and she videotaped her sister saying, hey, dad's a pervert. And dad says, shut that camera off. Shut it off now. That didn't get played for the jury. So a lot of things that did not come in. And I will tell you that Sarah does admit in her podcast, it wasn't in her podcast, it was in a different podcast where she was being interviewed. She talks about how the police told her many times that there was insufficient evidence. They didn't have enough evidence to convict her father, and that they were only going to get one chance. And that was it. Last week, that was it. That was your one chance. Now you're asking, oh, can the state appeal? No, it cannot. A defendant can appeal a conviction, but the state can't appeal an acquittal. Doesn't happen. You can't do it. You can only try a person one time. Now, you can try them more than once if they've been convicted and the conviction is overturned. Then the state can come back and try you again. But that's not what happened here. This was an acquittal. Case is done. That was your one bite. And she was warned that that could happen. Okay. I'd love to interview her. I'd love to know what she thinks of this. And like I said before, I hope she continues to do her good work. Okay. So, are you going to join me on The Great Escape? Yeah. Also, I do want to mention that down below, that little bar down below, you can hit the thumbs up, but if you scroll over a little bit, there is a super thanks button. I would really appreciate it if you guys would make one-time donations to the channel, because that is how I support my extra income. Yeah, that supplements my Social Security and helps me bring you this information every day of the week, which I love to do. So have a great Tuesday, everybody, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.